What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Multifamily Methods Real Estate Podcast. I'm super excited to get started and to tell everyone about my journey. So, in this podcast, I'm going to have probably a lot of solo podcasts. I'm sure I'll have guests along the way, but I wanted to have a platform to really put out there, how I created financial freedom as a real estate investor. What steps I've taken along the way, obstacles, all the mistakes that I've made, and really have a platform for people to learn from my mistakes, learn from my successes, and really hear from someone who, started from nothing and was able to create complete financial freedom through real estate investing. Just kind of share my journey. So today I want to talk about just my overall journey as a real estate investor. How I got started, kind of what my journey looked like, and kind of the zero to hero story. And then for future podcasts, I'll get into, the ins and outs of real estate, finding deals, raising money, multifamily properties, construction management, property management, operations, really all the tools that one needs to learn to become a successful real estate investor. And then I'm sure I'll get into, my other active businesses that I run, personal stories about, myself, my leisure time, my family, friends, all sorts of stuff. So, really just a podcast to put it all out there, give a really raw version of myself so that people could get to know me and hopefully inspire a few people along the way. So I started as a real estate investor when I was 21 years old. So, I was a junior in college. I was an intern for John Deere as a mechanical engineer. And I remember this season of my life very clearly because I felt a lot of emptiness, if I'm being frank. I had been pursuing basketball my entire life since I was a little kid. I wanted to play professional ball. Every waking moment of every day was spent practicing basketball. And I eventually made it to college basketball as a Division II athlete, and everyone was bigger than me, stronger than me, and more skilled than me. And so, I quickly came to the realization that professional basketball was not going to be for me, and I gave up on that dream completely. And so, after I gave up on that dream, I found myself feeling quite empty because I no longer had a life's purpose. I was going to engineering school to pursue an engineering degree. I didn't even like engineering. I just Googled, what undergrad degree makes the most money, and engineering came up. And so I did it and quickly found out that that is not a good reason to pursue a degree. So I didn't enjoy what I was doing, and I lost my life's purpose in that moment. And so, I was sitting there during the summer in my John Deere internship. I was hating every moment of it. And I remember I always had a natural fascination for real estate investing for one reason or another. I grew up with my mom watching The Apprentice. I was always fascinated by just owning large skyscrapers in New York. I thought that was such a cool concept. And so even before I got into real estate, I knew that I wanted to get into real estate. In fact, I remember talking to my girlfriend at the time about getting into real estate, even though I had no idea what that meant. I just wanted to be a real estate investor. And so one day I was getting some steel-toed boots for my internship in John Deere. I was at a steel-toe shoe shop, and I whipped out my phone and I was on Instagram, and I saw a Grant Cardone ad for his millionaire booklet. It was just a short booklet. He was giving it away for free as a handout. And that ad completely changed my life. I saw that ad, had no idea who Grant Cardone was, but I was immediately hooked. As soon as I saw that ad, I was like, this is what I want to do. And to this day, I watch Grant Cardone content. He's really the reason why I got into this business. So, I started researching on Google, real estate investing stuff, quickly came across Bigger Pockets, and I was obsessed. At that point, every waking moment that I could remember, I was on Bigger Pockets, listening to podcasts, reading various books. And I was just really into real estate investing every waking moment that I had. And so, fast forward a little bit more into that summer, I made a post on Bigger Pockets that, I was looking to network with people and I was looking to get into real estate. And someone in Cedar Falls, Iowa had replied to me on Bigger Pockets and asked me to meet with him. And he was a property manager and he focused primarily on mobile homes. And so I met with this gentleman. He told me, hey, if you buy a mobile home here, we can manage it for you. And that could be a great way for you to get into real estate. And so the mobile home was $5,000. To me, that was a no-brainer. I had $5,000 saved. And so he kind of walked me through. I'm not sure why he did this, if he was just a good guy or, if he thought I was going to buy a bunch of mobile homes and that was going to help his property management business. But nonetheless, he helped me buy my first mobile home. So I bought it for $5,000, needed quite a bit of work. He also helped me with the construction. That was another $5,000. So I was all into this mobile home for $10,000. And the rent on the mobile home was something like $800. And so the numbers on that from a cash flow perspective, at least on the spreadsheet, was truly a no-brainer. That was easy for me. That made all the sense in the world. So I bought one, bought another one. So I had 3 mobile homes total. All numbers were, pretty similar. The other 2 mobile homes I actually bought with seller finance because they wanted a little bit more, and those mobile homes were fixed up. And so, I had these 3 mobile homes, and I thought I was freaking Grant Cardone out here. I was 21 years old. I had 3 mobile homes, and I was set. And, after that summer internship, I went back home. Really started learning more about real estate. When I was in college, I would go to the library just to read more real estate books. Started partying less because I was busy reading real estate books. And I bought my first single family house January of 2018. And so I was still 21 at the time. I was still 21 at the time. Maybe I was 22. But I bought my first single family home, found that first deal through a Craigslist listing, bought it with hard money. I found the hard money lender through actually a referral from a property manager, and I found the property manager from Google. So I found the listing on Craigslist. I Googled property manager near me, found the property manager. Property manager was so gracious, walked the property with me, referred me to a hard money lender. The hard money lender, gave me a shot. He was really hesitant about working with a 21-year-old with no money or no credit. But, eventually I convinced him somehow to give me 100% of the money that I needed. And I purchased this single family home for $25,000. The construction budget was $14,000. That hard money lender referred me to a contractor that did all the construction work. And so I was all into this deal for $39,000. And it appraised for something like $65,000 back in 2018. And so I was able to burr out of that deal. I refinanced somehow found a lender who was willing to work with me. Actually, before I refinanced that, I had bought two more deals because my first refinance was a blanket loan. So I had that one for $65,000. I used the same lender for another single family house in St. Louis. The purchase for that was $50,000. Rehab was $30,000. That one appraised for like $130,000. All these property values have doubled since then, by the way. In fact, the first one's now worth $175,000, so that one's tripled. The second one today is worth like $250,000, so that one is basically doubled. And then that same lender gave me all the money that I needed for a duplex as well. And so I don't know how I convinced him to do this. I think it's because he saw that they were all good deals and I was actually executing on them somehow. So he gave me all the money I needed for these first three deals. I'm thinking I'm a genius. I'm growing so quickly. I'm 21 years old. And then I was able to, finding a lender to refinance was actually very difficult because I didn't have income or credit or anything. But I was able to find they're called non-QM lenders, non-qualified mortgage. Basically lenders, it's kind of like a DSCR loan, debt service coverage ratio loan. Basically a lender who cares about the deal, not about you as a borrower. So I was able to find a lender that did a blanket loan for me for those first three deals. And, the rest was history. I was hooked at that point. Graduated college. I knew that I wanted to become a full-time real estate investor from that point forward. So I worked a job as an engineer. I started out as a sales engineer. Actually, my first job out of college was for a real estate investing company here in St. Louis. And Core Properties was their name, or is their name. So I worked for them. They ended up firing me after like a couple of months because I wasn't doing a good job as an employee. I was too focused on my own real estate investing work. And so my computer's about to die, so I gotta plug this in. And so they fired me. I found a job as a sales engineer. They also fired me. And then I found a job as another sales engineer. And it was that company that I was able to actually quit from because I had become financially free, 5.5 years later. But when I worked my first job for this real estate investing company, I had all these interest payments from the hard money loans. I had just maxed out credit cards to pay for those. And I was absolutely broke. I had negative money, I had debt. I was very, very broke. And so one of my best buddies and I, we rented a duplex here in St. Louis, part of town called Soulard. And we decided that we were going to Airbnb our rooms while we stayed there so that we didn't have to pay rent. It sounds horrible. We slept on the couch in the family room for 2 years. We did not stay in our room. Every now and again, if we did not have an Airbnb guest, we would sleep in our beds. But 90% of the time, we would sleep on the couch. And it's funny, my buddy had really good Airbnb reviews. He would make the bed and, clean the place and do what you're supposed to do as an Airbnb host. I did none of those things. I sometimes even forgot to make the bed. So one person would leave and then the next person would come the very next day and I would get a bad review because nothing, there were blankets and pillows everywhere. The bed wasn't done. It was a disaster. A lot of people were obviously grossed out. I don't know how my friend did it because I had a job and so I had to leave at 6:30 a.m., but my Airbnb guest wouldn't leave until like 8 a.m. And so sometimes my buddy would make the bed and like clean, put everything in the laundry, swap it out for me. But other times he couldn't. And so Anyways, I had really bad reviews, but it was good enough to last for 2 years where me and my buddy did not pay any rent the entire time we were there. We lived for free, which is exactly what we wanted. Our rent was $1,050, so it was $525 each. Pretty sure my buddy was profitable. Actually, he made money. I like just about broke even. I basically lived for free, which was the goal because $500 a month was a lot of money to me back in the day. And then I worked a job at Hu Hot Mongolian Grill as a server, and that job gave me one free meal per shift. So I worked there every night after working my engineering job. My engineering job was a sales engineering job, so I took customers out to lunch. So I ate lunch for free. I intermittent fasted, so I didn't eat breakfast. I had lunch for free, and then I ate dinner at Hu Hot, and that was my schedule. So food was free. My car was gifted to me in high school by my parents. I took very good care of that. It was a Pontiac Grand Prix 2004. I rode that thing until it couldn't drive anymore. And that lasted me until my second sales engineering job. My second sales engineering job gave me a car as part of the job. So it was like perfect timing. As soon as that first car poo-pooed on me, I got the second car for free to work for my, it was a company vehicle. It was a Honda Accord, which I loved that car, by the way. When I became financially free, I bought another Honda Accord for my own vehicle before I got my truck. But so no car payments. Gas was eventually taken care of by my second engineering job, but for my first one, I had to pay gas, no car payments. Car insurance wasn't much. Food was free, rent was free. And so basically gas, insurance, and alcohol is what I spent money on because I used to like to party a lot. I still like to go out, but back in the day I used to love to party all the time. Like 4 days a week, all the time. And so that's what I basically spent my money on. And I accredit a lot of my success today to that, living below my means. And to this day, fast forward to my track record today. I've been in the business 8 years. I own $60 million worth of real estate, over 450 units. I have an 8-figure net worth, and I got that before the age of 30. And I make more money monthly than I could possibly spend. So I'm completely financially free. The money's coming in. I have no debt. My mortgage is paid off. My cars are paid off. Money is not an issue for me anymore. And I did this before the age of 30. Today I'm 30. I just recently turned 30. But I did all of this before the age of 30. So I created complete financial freedom within that time. And to this day, with all of that financial abundance, I still very much live below my means. So my house is paid off. I don't have a mortgage. My cars are paid off. My wife and I probably spend 30% of what we make monthly, if that. And we live pretty extravagantly. We have a chef, we have a maid, and we have, postpartum doula that comes over and helps us with things. So we have a good life. And I'm still living significantly below my means. So I accredit a lot of my success to the fact that when I was starting out, I slept on a couch. My living expenses were essentially zero. And so that's the first piece of advice I would give. If you're out there, you want to get into real estate, living below your means can make a substantial difference in your ability to save up every penny and invest all of it into real estate. I've always been a firm believer in, sacrificing for the short term so that you can live in abundance for the long term. And I'm still doing that to this day. And obviously, as you get more money, it becomes easier and easier to do that. So I'll talk a lot more about my story But basically, I had those jobs, lived below my means, continued obsessing with the business, listened to podcasts, hired a mentor, did all these things. 1 year later, I bought my first apartment complex. So I bought a 17 unit, I believe it was January of 2019. So a year after buying my first single family home. Because Grant Cardone kept telling me if you want to be successful and wealthy, you got to get into the apartment business. And so I took that to heart. I bought my first apartment. That property was an absolute freaking disaster. That is the worst decision I've ever made in real estate, was buying that 17 unit. I bought it not knowing how to budget, not know how to manage construction. I paid a hard money lender 18% interest and 8 points. He absolutely bent me over, and I let him because I really wanted the property. He made multiple six figures as the lender on that apartment, which is way more than what I made. And I ended up, when I refinanced, I didn't have enough to pay him back. So to this day, I actually still owe him a $50,000 note that is owed 10 years from the time that I refinanced, which was like 4 years ago. So in 6 years, I got to pay him $50,000. I begged him to let me do that. And surprised he still wanted to do that after making the money that he made. But nonetheless, it worked out. It was worth it. But that property had a boiler that kept poo-pooing on me every day. The tenant class was absolutely horrible. I ran out of money for the construction, so me and my dad or my best buddy or whoever was willing to help, really cheap labor, was doing the work at the properties, painting, laying flooring, cabinets, all the things, because I couldn't afford to hire anyone else. So that lasted for about 2 years. When I met my now wife, at the time girlfriend, when I was 23 years old, that apartment complex was still the bane of my existence when I met her, and it put a lot of stress in our relationship. But I didn't have a solution. I had to figure something out. I had to fix it up or something, because I owed this exorbitant amount of interest every single month. And even after I refinanced out of that, the property was not producing income. So I really, really struggled with that property. But I was able to partner with a nonprofit on that deal eventually. Had meetings with them for like a year, sat down with them, negotiated. They were an affordable housing nonprofit. I was an investor. And so they were able to accomplish their goal of acquiring more housing units, affordable housing units. And I acquired my goal by, giving this headache to someone else, and they funded, all of the construction. And the deal ended up being a tremendous success for me. And I think that deal is what gave me the confidence, to know it's like, if I can deal with that, I can literally deal with anything. So that property ended up being really, really good for me. Obviously, I've gone through tremendous stress since then with, bad deals or partnerships not working out or bad locations or, really everything in between. And so I'm really grateful actually for those, let's call it traumatic experiences or traumatic deals or bad deals, because it taught me that I can persevere through anything, so now when I get into these really stressful situations, I know that I can handle them. But I learned these strategies. I learned the BRRRR method, creative finance, partnerships. I learned all these things that allowed me to buy real estate with no money. And it's not like I got more successful every year. It was more like I had zero cash flow, zero success. And then 5 years later, everything really hit at once. All my deals finally started to cash flow. I was fortunate in that I was an investor during the COVID era, so I realized a lot of appreciation during that time. So I really got lucky in my timing, because I started in 2018. Now here I am today, financially free. I have a construction business, property management business, education business, hard money lending business, and I think that's it. And then I flip houses on the side, buy a lot of rentals. And so this podcast is going to be all about everything I've learned along the way, all the strategies you need to create financial freedom through real estate for yourself or for your family. And I'll go through all the ins and outs of those different businesses, real estate strategies. I've implemented a lot of new softwares and systems with my management business that I'm excited to talk about. And so, that's my story. That's how I am where I am today. I am now a father, a husband, and a real estate investor. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is the Multifamily Methods Real Estate Podcast. This is season 1, all about my journey. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.